Right. So you want to build some wealth that lasts.
Right.
And maybe even bring in some passive income along the way.
This is like a dream. Yeah.
It does. And you sent over this YouTube video, 8 assets that make people rich and never work again. Pretty bold title.
It is bold.
Yeah.
A lot of promises in that title alone.
It does get your attention, right? So we're diving into this thing and seeing what insights we can pull out.
Sounds good. Let's unpack it.
All right. So first up, asset number 1, building a business. And they go right for the big names, Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, all those giants.
Of course, you got to have the celebrity entrepreneurs.
Right. But then it does something kind of cool, I think.
What's that?
It shifts gears and talks about the hustle, the sheer amount of work that goes into building something from the ground up.
Right. It reminds you that these guys, they didn't just snap their fingers and become billionaires. There were sacrifices, late nights, probably a good deal of stress involved.
It's almost like a reality check, because we see the end result, the massive companies, the unimaginable wealth.
Exactly. We don't always see the years of struggle, the setbacks, the pivots that had to happen along the way.
And I think that's an important distinction for anyone looking to build wealth, whether it's through a business or any other avenue.
Absolutely. It's about mindset, isn't it? That shift from trading time for money to potentially creating something that generates income even when you're not clocked in.
That's the dream, right? Having an asset that works for you even while you're off doing other things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or even better, while you're on that beach vacation you always dreamed of.
Now the video makes it clear starting a business, it's not for the faint of heart. It takes guts, resilience, that willingness to put in the hours.
Yeah, it's not the easy road, that's for sure. But then again, the most rewarding paths rarely are.
Truth. So asset number 2, and this one caught my eye, real estate.
Okay, yeah, real estate's a popular one. And they specifically talk about using OPM, other people's money.
Yeah, I was hoping we could dig into that a bit because for someone who's just starting out, that concept can feel a bit daunting.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's essentially about leveraging debt strategically to potentially accelerate your wealth building.
So using borrowed money, like a mortgage, to buy a rental property. The idea being that the rent covers the mortgage payments and you're building equity in this asset.
Exactly. You're using other people's money, your tenant's rent, to potentially create a passive income stream.
Okay, and the video does touch on this. It's not without risk, right?
Right. Anytime you're dealing with debt, there's inherent risk. And real estate, it's not as simple as just collecting rent. You got property management, finding tenants, maintenance, all that fun stuff.
So it's not completely passive, even though that's the goal, to generate that passive income stream.
Exactly. It takes work.
Yeah.
But the video does bring up something else that's enticing about real estate, the tax advantages.
Yeah, it kind of glossed over that part.
Yeah.
What are some of those tax benefits that might come with owning rental properties?
Well, one of the big ones is depreciation. The IRS allows you to deduct a portion of the property's value each year to account for wear and tear.
Even if the property is actually going up in value.
Yep. Which is often the case with real estate. So you're reducing your taxable income even though your investment might be appreciating. And then, when you eventually sell the property, you could benefit from lower capital gains taxes compared to other investments.
Interesting. So you might be bringing in rental income, but you're not necessarily being taxed on the full amount because you can deduct those depreciation expenses.
That's the idea. But of course, tax laws are complex and always changing. So it's crucial to consult with a tax professional.
Always good advice. Now, both of these avenues, building a business and getting into real estate, they require a certain level of upfront capital, right? Whether it's your own savings, investments, or those loans we talked about. But the video recognizes that not everyone's in a position to take on those kinds of risks right away.
Right. It can be a big leap, especially when you're first starting out.
So for those who might be looking for more accessible entry points into building wealth, the video introduces what it calls paper assets.
Okay. And by paper assets, it sounds like they're primarily referring to things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, investments that might feel a bit less tangible than, say, a physical property.
Exactly. And I think this is where diversification comes into play. Instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, you're spreading your risk by investing in a variety of assets.
Precisely. And with these paper assets, you can often get started with relatively small amounts of money, making them more accessible to a wider range of investors.
It's a bit like dipping your toes into the world of investing, getting a feel for it without needing a ton of capital up front.
Right. It's about lowering that barrier to entry. But even within the world of paper assets, there's a whole spectrum of investment styles and risk tolerances to consider.
That's a good point. The video doesn't really delve into those nuances, does it?
Not really. It
Yep.
kind of keeps it at a high level.
Which is understandable, given the format and everything. But it's worth noting for our listeners because there's no one-size-fits-all approach to investing, even within that category.
Exactly. It's about aligning your investment strategy with your personal risk tolerance and financial goals. Some investors might be comfortable with higher risk, higher reward options, while others might prefer a more conservative approach.
And then it gets even more interesting. The video takes this turn, and it's actually the part that made me want to have you on this deep dive. They start talking about God's money.
God's money. Okay, now we're getting into some interesting territory. That's not a term you hear every day in a financial context.
It's definitely attention-grabbing, right. But what they're essentially talking about is commodities.
Commodities, you mean like gold, silver, oil, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Things that have, I guess you could say, intrinsic value. Things that people will always need, regardless of what's happening in the stock market or with any particular company.
I see where they're going with this.
Yeah.
It's about having something tangible, something with real-world value, as a hedge against inflation or economic instability.
Exactly. And the video really plays on this idea that these assets hold a more real value than paper money, which, let's face it, can be printed endlessly.
Right. It's about diversifying away from a system that's built on something that can theoretically be manipulated or devalued. Gold, for example, has been a safe haven asset for centuries. It tends to hold its value or even appreciate during times of crisis.
It's like that saying, money talks, but gold whispers.
I like that. It's about having a backup plan, something tangible that you can rely on when the value of that dollar bill starts to feel a little shaky.
It definitely makes you think about the bigger picture of wealth and value. But speaking of bigger picture thinking, the video then shifts gears to an asset that I think is often overlooked. Time.
Time. Yeah, we all wish we had more of it. But how do you treat time as an asset?
Well, it's about recognizing that time is a finite resource. It's the one thing we can't create more of.
That's for sure. So how to make the most of it then?
The video really emphasizes the idea of starting young.
Okay, so the earlier you start, the better.
That's the general idea. It's about recognizing that the younger you are, the more time you have to invest, whether that's in learning new skills, building relationships, or, yes, even experimenting with different investment strategies.
It's about recognizing the power of compounding, not just in terms of financial investment, but in all aspects of life. The earlier you start planting those seeds right, the more time they have to grow and flourish.
It's like that saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Exactly. And while the video really stresses starting young, I think the message is for everyone. It's never too late to start investing in yourself, trying new things, going after what you want.
It's more about the mindset than the actual age, right? Being willing to learn and grow no matter what stage of life you're in.
Precisely. And it goes back to time being precious. If you're not careful, years can slip away without you even realizing it.
It can be scary how quickly time flies by. So let's talk about another asset that goes hand in hand with this. The video calls it health, which sounds pretty straightforward. But they really dig into how it impacts every aspect of your life.
Yeah, they frame it as an investment that pays back in every way. It's not just about living longer, right? It's about having the energy to actually enjoy those years.
Exactly. To pursue your goals, to be present with your loved ones, it all requires you to be healthy, both physically and mentally.
Absolutely. And it ties back to everything we've been discussing. If you're not healthy, it's harder to build that business or manage those properties. It takes a toll on your mental clarity and your drive.
It's like that foundation we were talking about before, for your entire life, really.
Exactly. You can't build a solid structure on shaky ground.
The video focuses a lot on the physical side of health, but I'd argue that mental and emotional well-being are just as crucial, wouldn't you say?
100%.
Yeah.
Managing stress, practicing mindfulness. These things are essential for your overall well-being, which then impacts everything else.
It's all connected. It's about taking care of yourself holistically. So you sent over this video, right? And there's this part where they talk about online assets, which I thought was interesting.
It's very of the moment, isn't it? Reflects how much the digital world has become a part of our lives.
Right. And they mentioned things like building a YouTube channel, creating online courses, even just having a strong social media presence. But it's like, how do you actually turn that online presence into something tangible, something that generates real wealth?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's about leveraging those platforms strategically. You have to offer something valuable, whether it's information, entertainment, or a product or service that people actually want or need.
So it's not just about being internet famous or having a huge following. It's about what you do with that platform.
Exactly. It's about creating something using your unique skills and passions that resonates with an audience.
Like building your own little digital empire.
Exactly. But just like in the real world, it takes work, consistency, and a bit of luck.
It all ties back to that entrepreneurial spirit we were talking about earlier, right?
Absolutely. And I think it speaks to the changing landscape of work. The 9-to-5 job isn't the only option anymore. People are finding more flexible ways to generate income, often through online platforms.
It's about diversifying your income streams, creating multiple avenues for money to flow in.
Exactly. And that brings us to the last asset. The video highlights your network.
Which, in a lot of ways, ties everything together.
It does, doesn't it? Because ultimately, business, real estate, the online world, it all comes down to people.
The video talks about the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. Mentors, collaborators, friends who support your vision and challenge you to grow.
It's about building genuine relationships based on mutual respect and a desire to see each other succeed.
I liked how they emphasized that. It's not just about what you can get from your network, it's about what you can contribute.
Exactly. It's about creating a virtuous cycle of support and abundance where everyone benefits.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from tangible assets like real estate to more intangible things like time, health, and relationships.
It's all interconnected, isn't it? Like pieces of a puzzle.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this whole conversation about wealth building. There's no one right way to do it.
Right. What works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding the path that aligns with your values and aspirations.
And that path might even change over time as you evolve and grow.
Absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination. Right?
Exactly. Now, something you said earlier really got me thinking about all this. You mentioned how there's no one right way to approach wealth building. And the video does present these 8 assets as distinct paths. But I'm starting to see them more like those Venn diagrams, Each circle is an asset, but it's the overlap where things get really interesting.
I like that visual.
Right. So like we talked about time and health being fundamental. But what about online assets and your network? Could a strong online presence actually help you build a stronger network in real life too?
Absolutely. Think about using your online platform to share your expertise, attract like-minded people. That's networking.
It's like this feedback loop. Your online presence feeds your real-world network, and vice versa.
Exactly. Or how about real estate and building a business? Maybe you buy a property that could eventually become your office space.
So you've got this physical asset that's also serving your business goals.
Right. Or using rental income to help fund the early stages of your business.
There you go. It's like those assets are working together, boosting each other up.
It's about being creative, spotting those connections, not limiting yourself to one path.
So it's not about picking one asset from this list and ignoring the rest.
Not at all. It's about understanding how they can all work together, how they can intersect to create something even bigger than the sum of their parts.
I love that perspective. It makes this whole wealth building journey a lot less intimidating and a lot more exciting, right?
Exactly. It's not about following a rigid set of rules. It's about being willing to experiment, to try new things, to see what works for you.
And that journey is going to look different for everyone.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach here.
No.
It's about figuring out what resonates with you, what aligns with your values, your goals, your risk tolerance.
And then being open to adapting, adjusting that path as you go along.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination. And the most important thing is to enjoy the ride.
That's some great advice right there. So to all our listeners out there, remember, it's not about chasing some arbitrary definition of success. It's about defining what success means to you.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to get creative, to think outside the box, to forge your own path.
And who knows, maybe by exploring those intersections, those unexpected connections between these assets, you'll stumble upon something truly unique, something that transforms your entire relationship with wealth and abundance.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
It is. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep building, and most importantly, keep the conversation going.